Hello everyone. Today we continue with our topic on elasticity. Last time we have covered what elasticity is. We've learned the formula for price elasticity of demand. We've learned a few factors which affect elasticity. We've learned how to interpret the sign and figure for elasticity, and today we continue with the remaining parts of this lecture. Today we are going to discuss what is income elasticity of demand, what is the formula, how to measure it, and how exactly we can understand the figure, what we can do with this number. We've also learned what is the cross elasticity of demand, how prices of other goods can affect quantity demanded for our particular product which we are selling. But most importantly, we are going to cover why do we have to analyze elasticity at all, what information it can provide, and how it can help us to make important business decisions. But before we start with the new material, let's briefly go through what we have covered last time, a quick revision of the previous lecture. So first of all, elasticity is a measure of responsiveness or sensitivity of demand to various factors which will affect it. Strictly speaking, it measures how exactly quantity demanded will respond to various events. For example, change in price, change in income, change in price in other goods, and so on. And we've learned that different shapes of demand curve can result in different effects. For example, if our demand curve looks like this red line, this usually implies that a small percentage change in price can lead to dramatically larger reduction in quantity. When we move from one equilibrium point 1 to equilibrium point 2, price increases by a little bit, and this leads to a dramatic drop in quantity which consumers are buying at this new price. While if our demand curve is relatively steep, it means that even a large increase in price shown by this green arrow will lead to only small reduction in quantity. Different demand curves will show different sensitivity or responsiveness of demand to changes in price. And this is exactly what elasticity measures. So price elasticity of demand shows us how exactly quantity demanded in percentage or proportionate terms will respond to changes in price in percentage or proportionate terms. And this is the formula which we are going to use for our exercises. Let me show you a simple example of how exactly we can apply this formula. Let's imagine that we are facing a certain demand curve. Initially, we are located at point A, and our product cost, let's say, £10. At this price, consumers are willing to purchase two items of this particular product. Price, quantity. Price is £10, and our sales, number of units consumers are buying, is equal to 2. We are not satisfied with the amount which we are selling, and we decide to drop the price. We drop the price to, let's say, £6. This, of course, leads to increase in quantity consumed and our sales. So we move from point A to point B along the same demand curve. So as price drops to £6, consumers are willing to purchase more. As price drops, quantity increases. The question is it a large increase in quantity or not? Is our demand sensitive or not? To answer this question, we'll need to calculate the value of elasticity. For this, we'll need to relate change in quantity in percentage terms to change in price in percentage terms. Let's try to calculate this. We'll try to calculate the size of this change and this change in percentage terms. So what is change in quantity? To calculate this change, we take new quantity, subtract old quantity, original amount, divided by the original amount, and multiply by 100%. Our new quantity is 5, new amount. Our old or original quantity used to be 2. We need to divide it by 2, by the original old amount. This is where we've started, and multiply by 100%, which will be 3 divided by 2 times 100% will be 150%. That's how our quantity increases, 150%. Okay? Next, we need to calculate change in price in percentage terms. So we are trying to figure out how big is this drop in price. We are following the same idea. We take new price, subtract old price, divide by the original price, old price, and multiply by 100%. What is our new price? What is the final price? It's the price at point B where we've ended up, so it's £6. The original price, old price, was 10. We divide it by the old price 10 and multiply by 100%. So what do we have in the numerator? Minus 4. Please make sure that you don't forget this minus, it's important. Divided by 10 times 100%, which is minus 40%. So what do we have? We have plus 150% increase in quantity due to minus 40% drop in price. If we divide these values by one by another, this will be equal to minus 375. As the value of our elasticity is greater than unity in absolute terms, so if we take the absolute value of our elasticity, it's greater than unity, 375 is greater than 1, which means that our demand is elastic. In other words, it's very sensitive to changes in price. Relatively smaller drop in price caused a dramatically larger increase in quantity in percentage terms. Our consumers are sensitive, are responsive to price changes. Relatively smaller price drop leads to relatively larger changes in quantity. So this is how we apply formula for elasticity. This is how we do our calculations. We've learned last time that price elasticity of demand is always negative. This is because price and quantity always move in the opposite direction. So if we look at this formula, whenever price goes up, quantity demanded will drop, because they're negatively related, and the other way around. So we'll always have one positive and one negative figure, or the other way around. In any case, the whole fraction, the whole ratio is going to be negative. So elasticity, price elasticity of demand is always negative. And we've learned various shapes which demand curve can take. We've learned that demand can be relatively flat, which usually implies that this demand curve is elastic. And this usually happens when elasticity of demand is greater than unity in numerical terms, in absolute terms. When demand is steep, this implies that demand is inelastic, and this happens when the value of elasticity is less than unity, between 0 and 1. So if it's greater than unity, demand is elastic. If it's less than unity, demand is inelastic. And sometimes we can face extreme cases when demand is absolutely or perfectly or infinitely inelastic, the value of elasticity is 0, or when demand is perfectly or absolutely or infinitely elastic, when elasticity is equal to infinity in absolute terms. So this is what we've covered, and the last bit which we've covered last time was determinants of price elasticity, the factors which will affect price elasticity of demand. The most important factor is number, availability, and closeness of substitutes. The more substitutes the product has, the more elastic demand is going to be. If it's easy to switch between different products, consumers are going to be very sensitive to changes in price. It's easy for them to switch away from our product, and this is what they will do if we try to increase our price. Time is the second determinant. The longer the time period, the more opportunities consumers will have to adjust and switch away when price goes up, and demand is going to be more elastic in the longer term. Share of income spent on a good, it's another factor. Usually the higher the proportion of income which consumers spend on a particular product, the more sensitive or responsive demand is going to be to changes in price. Definition of a market: the broader the market, the less elastic demand will be, because there will be few alternatives. Habit or addictiveness of a product: usually if a product is very addictive, then consumers are going to be not sensitive to changes in price. Even if price changes dramatically, they're not going to reduce their consumption levels. This is what we've covered last time, and now we are going to proceed to the new material.